we have become so like inept on being driven to make our own decisions. Do I feel good? Do I not feel good? Should I push it? Should I not push it? Build or not to build? There's like zero flexibility for mental and emotional adjustment and creativity based around how am I feeling today, and I'm going to make this decision. And it's a skill that has to be taught, that you have to adapt to, that you have to persevere through, that you have to experience before you can do it on race day, because race day is about making decisions in your own head. We are back. It is Thursday. This is Crushing Iron Podcast 290.
290 it is, man.
10 away from 300, where we will have a special guest, Maddie. Back on podcast episode number 2. It was one of our most highly rated podcasts, which was one of our very first, the Dogcast.
Oh.
Yeah, we might have a redo, or maybe we'll invite Kona on and they can just chat for a few minutes on episode 300. But no, we appreciate you joining us. Again, Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 290, where we cover all things triathlon, life, how they intersect, how they affect each other, and then most importantly, Mike and I, as both age group athletes ourselves and coaches, try to share our experiences over the last accumulated like 20 years or so to hopefully set you up for success on your own journey, help you out any way that we can, and support you through that. We also have a closed Facebook group called Crushing Iron Group. Just search it on Facebook. You can be a part of it. A lot of great people in there who are willing to give really good advice, share their experience as well. It's just a very open group in a sea of Ironman Facebook pages that are riddled with sarcasm and belittling. This is a group that is just full of awesome people, and you and I both of us have been fortunate enough to meet quite a few of them at races or events or camps, and it is really great to see that. And so, yeah, we appreciate you joining us, and we hope to bring you some more fun-filled knowledge today in episode 290.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. We don't know everything. Well, we know. No.
That's the thing. We definitely
yeah, we definitely
Listen,
don't.
I'm married, man. I am fully aware. I do not know everything.
Yeah. So we just share our experience, and as I was telling somebody last night when they emailed me a first-timer from Ohio. Sent me a thank you. We met up there, and
nice.
Yeah, so, we just, as I told them, this is the same, basically these podcasts are the kind of conversations you and I have been having for 6 years, and we are just passionate about the sport, and we like to talk about different things that we encounter and live through and how they clash or complement, our life through triathlon. And one of the things that she emailed me about I thought was interesting. I don't necessarily think it could be a topic for the day, but okay. I thought it was an interesting point of discussion, because before we got cut off, you were talking about your start in triathlon many, many years ago. And she did this Ohio for the first time, and she pointed out that she heard a lot of people kind of bitching and complaining about different stuff throughout the day and all this. And she couldn't understand it because it was her first Ironman branded race, and it was the first time that she saw what she described as sort of a wealth or almost an embarrassment of support on the course, and different things that she had no idea she'd experience, and how the local residents out on the run course were spraying her with hoses and just embracing her the whole experience. And she thought it was a phenomenal experience. And I know that Ironman kind of gets, everybody wants to kind of trash them.
Dude, they're easy to blame, dude.
Yeah,
that's everybody's scapegoat. No one wants to take accountability and look at what they can do or what they've done. It's always let's blame the big red machine.
I know, yeah, and it just kind of dawned on me that I think a lot of people, as they get going in the sport and do several Ironman, I think it's just natural to get a little jaded, and we have a little bit of history of kind of trying to scorch them a little bit, but I think it's more in the sense of you get familiar with things and you see things and you kind of hope for better changes. But I think it's more of a, you're always looking for something better and better and better, but it's pretty good, the way they do their races, especially like up in Ohio.
Like, we all give them a bad rap, but like go do another race
Mm-hmm.
and then see like if you get the same amount of support. And I mean, I'm sure there are some, just like there are some better Ironman branded events than others, but like anyway, go ahead. I'm doing everything I can. I've taken apart multiple soapboxes today because I want to get on one. And I'm just going to put it aside and let you continue, and I'll just follow your lead.
No, I don't know if I even have a place to continue, but I just think that the reality is it's kind of like when you get used to something, you kind of start looking for ways. I suppose it's just like what we're talking about, relationships or anything like that. It's easy to kind of start nitpicking at little things that kind of grind on you or whatever. And, as a spectator the other day for Ohio, I couldn't sit there and say, wow, man, this race needs to do this, and this. And, I just feel like that Ironman there's certain, I think you forget, that first time you do a Ironman branded race, how really kind of energized it is and how kind of pumped you get in the morning. And just the whole vibe around the scene is pretty impressive, really. And, yeah, do another race, and it's just, people like to do other races for different reasons. Usually it's because it's cheaper and, it feels like more of a small town race and everything like that. I get that too, but the way Ironman puts on their productions is pretty big deal. I mean,
listen, man, we have created our own bubble that is simultaneously created to protect us, that is also suffocating us, and we have created a reality in which our first inclination, our first thought is, why aren't you doing this for me? I deserve better, or I expect this. And it's just like funny. I think if you look back just to like what you did or who you were 10 years ago, the things you didn't have access to, the devices that never existed, the connections that weren't possible, everything, like how much has changed just in the last 10 years, like in the way you went about your day-to-day life, picking up a phone off the wall to call a friend. Like I remember, just think about how different life is now because now we can do anything we want to an instant, and then we can also shortcut it to every single way possible. Instead of picking up the phone, we can just say, hey, I'll see you in 5. Or maybe it was you that was talking about like the doorbell industry is like suffering because people aren't actually going to the door anymore. They're just texting you that they're here. So like no one even goes to the door anymore. They just text you when they pull in the parking lot and say, I'm here, and you come outside. Just how different things are. Like I remember having to like beg my parents for like my own phone line. And then once they got it, it was like a huge deal. And then you actually, talk on the phone for like 30, 45 minutes to the girl you thought you were going to marry when you were a freshman in high school, like we all did. And just how different things are, and now how things continue to be created and things continue to be offered. And then our first thought is, why can't things continuously be better? Because we do. We live in a world where things are continuously getting offered more.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I talked about this, kind of briefly in the parking lot on the way to dinner, because we were talking about that article that I posted about data.
Yep.
And the biggest thing that I just can't seem to get across enough, and that I just believe wholeheartedly, is people and companies and manufacturers, entrepreneurs, you name it, are creating data. They're creating numbers. They're defining and taking out data points, selected that they're now marketing that you need, because you know why? Because data is marketable and people want to consume. It doesn't mean you know how to apply it. It doesn't mean you know what it means. It doesn't mean anything. It's a bell and a whistle. Yet we're become just totally obsessed with it. And it's just another piece of not even information. It's a piece of material. No, it's not material. It's just a piece of sales that you can sell people, because people want to continually consume things. So when you go to these races, and I think to a point, when you've done races for so long and you've been to certain events, like I could easily right now tell you some of the best events I've ever been to. I could tell you that the old school Gulf Coast Triathlon events before Ironman took them over were some of the best events I've ever done in my entire life. They were great. They had tons of volunteers. I always felt, well taken care of. Never thought once about, anything else. They were very, very well put on. And there was only like 600 to 800 people at those events. And I think a lot of times, like, we go into these events and we go into with these expectations of everything's going to be perfect. I want more safety on the courses. Listen, and I'm telling you this in the, I'll try to be soft about it, but the most dangerous person on a race course is us. It's us, us, the triathlete. We are the most dangerous people, and there's 3,000 of us on a course, and we've gotten into this vicious cycle of it's dangerous, therefore I need to stay inside and protect myself more. But then when I get outside, I don't know how to handle a bike, so I can't. So now I'm actually causing more harm than good by protecting myself in a vacuum and not putting myself in danger. Yet when I go out on a course and putting others in danger, including myself. The same can be said for swimming and running and the things that people do or don't do to prepare themselves, but want to be safe in their bubble, their cocoon. And then when it comes race day, it's like the athletes are retreating to a place of protection and comfort and safety with Swift, trainer road, always on the trainer, never want to go outside because it's not safe. And then when we get to the race course, we're incredibly unsafe riders, because you see triathletes all the time who swerve in and out, who can't handle a bike. They are dangerous to themselves and other riders, and then they expect race directors to take more precautions. So the athletes are taking it on our own. We're responsible. We need to be held accountable. We aren't doing what we need to do to be good bike handlers. You go to a skills clinic, practice, brush up on your skills. So we're becoming worse at bike handling. And then we're asking and so on the flip side of that, to reciprocate it, we're asking the race directors that we should demand totally closed courses. Mm-hmm. Because we're not taking the things we want to, yet we also want more courses, yet we also want the prices not to be so high. Guess what? You can't have it all. The responsibility is on us. It's on us to be supportive. It's on us to give out appreciation and thankfulness and be grateful to things when they go right. It's also on us to critique and be open and opinionated about things that we should be accountable for. The athlete, like things that we can control. And we don't. We want to put other people in charge of us because it relieves us. Here's the thing: it doesn't relieve us from the pressure. It relieves us from any sort of accountability, because people are absolutely terrified these days of accountability. They would rather blame other people, and then what that also does, it just washes away and rinses what could be an absolutely wonderful experience. And I will tell you right now, firsthand, I am 100% totally guilty of getting consumed with, this is like an example of getting consumed with IronTrack at a race, that I forget to look up and watch what's going on around me. Yeah. And the last two races, I've just come up and like, just put it away, like almost like delete it. I haven't, because I can't, but I can, but I just not. And because I have so many athletes out there that I'm worried about, I'm going to make sure they're off the bike course, see how they're doing, that sometimes I look up and think, I almost miss so-and-so saying hi and giving a high five or giving a slap on the rear or saying a good job to even a stranger, because I'm just looking at my phone, refreshing and trying to make sure so-and-so is okay, or so-and-so got to this lap, or is on pace for whatever. And that's on me. I just think that's an example of how we've just become so obsessed with the instant information that's really takes nothing from us. Like, it doesn't take any energy. We just take our thumb and we scroll. That's it. Mindlessly scroll, when we could be sitting up, walking 4 feet to the right, and give a high five or a slap to somebody who really absolutely needs it.
Mm-hmm. It's a microcosm of what's going on in the world in general. The people, that I am kind of curmudgeon on that old school stuff, and I just see this thing about like doorbells, for example. It's like there's this kind of joke, I can't remember, but back in the day when people would ring the doorbell, like the whole family would get excited and run to the door and say, "Who is it? Who is it?" And now it's like if somebody knocks at your door, everybody hides. It's like, what is that?
They don't even hide, dude. They pull up an app on their phone. They're like, "Who's at our door?"
Yeah, who could that be? And then like you said, people text when they get there instead of coming up and saying hi to your kid or your dog or whatever. And it's just kind of weird, but like I remember when I first started going to watch Ironman races back in 2013. My first one was Louisville, and now they have Ironman Tracker, and it used to be called IronTrack. It was a third-party app. They did a nice job, but there was a lot of times when we thought that Ironman was kind of purposely holding up information from them or whatever the case may be, just to kind of keep them out of the game a little bit. But whatever that was, the reality was that sometimes it didn't work. We had to sit there and just sort of watch the race. You remember that? Like, and I can't imagine like what people would freak out right now if IronTracker didn't work. And to your point, there's so much stuff going on. It's just like, it is really weird. And, now that thing is amazing. It kind of, there are little, tweaks in there that kind of aren't accurate all the time, but it's pretty damn amazing what that thing can do as far as predicting when somebody might show up, etc. But now the thing is, like, everybody wants it to be real time, and, like, the next thing they're going to want video of everybody. It's just like, where does it end? And for me, it's always about, there's beauty in mystery. I kind of liked when they have weird splits and it's like, what's going on? Your mind starts putting together a story. Not always a good one, obviously, but
never a good one.
But and then sometimes they would show up when you least expected them, and it was like, whoa, that was weird. I wasn't. So there's that, and I just don't. The thing with data is, like, people want to know everything, and everything doesn't really mean anything a lot of times.
People don't necessarily want to know everything, because knowing means having more than just an opinion that you read by a headline or reading a piece of information that you've automatically assumed is fact. People like to pretend like they're totally 100% informed all the time. And like going back to your thing about and we should probably share this one. It's such a long time ago. I remember back to the Wisconsin race that we went to, the very first one that you did. And I remember I wrote about spectating that day, in that really cool story of the gentleman, you might remember his name, I don't, that I ended up walking with to the finish line. Total stranger. And this is like pitch black. It's probably, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. You had finished for a while, and we were out there on the race course. Allie was with me 7 years ago, and I remember seeing this guy. He was, and I think I've seen people like this on race course. He was like, running in the shape of like an upside down L. His like totally bent from the hips. Just back was seized up. I remember we ran a walk with him for, I think all the way till we couldn't get in the finishing chute. And what an experience that was, and how, even back then, like you said, like IronTrack wasn't really a big deal. Like, we had phones, but apps weren't even really a thing. Like, you just had to kind of wait and see like who was coming up. Like, I think they still had like the IronTrack app, but it wasn't anything like you have access to today. You just had to kind of guess when you were going to see so and so.
Yeah, you had to watch it. You had to look out on the course and say, "Are they coming? Is that them? Is it them?"
Yeah, and just how much like that, just that memory was, and I would have totally missed that if I had been staring at a phone and like never seen him. And
oh yeah.
So I just think that there's so many of those opportunities that we miss. And to be honest, I think there's also so many of those opportunities that we miss, in training when we're because I think in the age that we live in now, that right now, even, and I'm talking about just being intentional. So right now when you're training, because the thing is most athletes now do most of their training indoors. So what's actually happening is they're on the trainer. They might have Zwift going, which doesn't. And I was having this conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who came into Chattanooga that I've known for 7 or 8 years, and we were talking about the positive and negatives of Zwift, and how you don't have to be aware. You get this false sense of that you're riding a bike because you're getting a workout in, but the maneuvers and the ability to have to think. He was telling me he gets up at 3:30 in the morning every day and gets on his bike and goes and rides. I think that's the safest time of day to go because there's no cars. But that the ability to think quick and to be responsive and to have good bike handling, how important that is to him. And that once you sit on the trainer for forever, and again, like there, sometimes it's easier to be inside. I get it, because I do it. It's easier to do intervals inside. I get it, but there is no replacement for getting outside. And so what we were talking about was that how much, obviously how much that's affecting people in terms of their physical responses, but also in a mental and emotional way. People can have on. I mean, you've seen people. They've got like in their quote unquote pain cave. They've got like 19 screens on.
Yeah.
They've got Netflix, they've got ESPN watching baseball, they've got their Swift up there, they've got. I'm like, how in the hell do you pay attention to anything? How can you be engaged in anything? How do you not let your mind wander? Because your mind controls your body, and if you're supposed to be doing things intentional, you're supposed to be being exact, you're supposed to be putting your best effort. You just can't when you're putting yourself in a world of distraction, and it's hard because all you're doing is continuously adding interference in. Because all those, I'm not going to say radio waves, but all that different information all at one time, like I think I've used this analogy before, where you get that really odd seat at the bar where you are trying to watch a football game and you don't have like that direct line of sight. Mm-hmm. And so there's like two screens, one to the left and one to the right, and you just can't make up your mind which one's the one to watch it on. Mm. So you just go back and you know what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, I totally know.
That's right. Oh yeah, I've been there, I've done that. So you're like, God, which one I look at? And you roll, and then you find yourself just not watching it as much because you're going back and forth and get sidetracked. You just can't be engaged. And I just think that when it comes to being intentional and purposeful with your workouts, because that is allegedly what you're supposed to be doing if you're on the trainer, but most people aren't. They're sitting up on Swift, acting like they're biking 30 miles because that's what it says, while they're scrolling through Facebook, taking selfies, doing this and that. I'm like, how are you engaged? You can't tell me you're engaged. Like, and I know because I've adopted some newer school things, in comparison to what you have, but I'm also I don't get on Zwift. I don't get on Trainer Road. I don't have a smart trainer. I have just the traditional just a regular trainer. And when I have intervals, when I have something, I just put my headphones in and I just go to town. I like having that feeling of just putting myself in the moment and picturing things. And I honestly think that's a point that has been totally forgotten in this age of virtual training and virtual racing is having to create that in time and space and the picture and the kind of that meditational approach to going through what race day is going to look like and feel like, because you're letting a virtual screen do it for you. And the Olympic athletes do this. I think I was reading or listening to a podcast on the way back from Ohio to where, they would, they would do so much visualization before an event that they would know the whole course like in their head. We don't do that anymore. People are like surprised and stunned at every single thing that happens on a race course because all they've been doing is writing, peak to peak on this virtual reality Nintendo world called Swift. And I get it. I'm not bashing it. I think it's a great application. But no, I don't think there is any substitute for head down training, being in the moment, and picturing yourself. Like while you're in pain, picturing yourself, working hard, working harder. I don't think you can replicate that. And I know some people say, oh, well, it's competition and I do better at it. I would argue with that. I'm sure everybody's personal, or it's all personal with different people, but the best training I feel like I've ever done, and I have talked to many athletes who would agree and say the same thing, is when I can put on my earphones and they'll put on, like I said, I think we all have like specific songs that take us back to like a specific occasion. And I'm sure a lot of athletes have like a specific song for like every Ironman race or every 70.3, every Olympic, every sprint, whatever it is. That's like this. That was like their jam. That's their go-to. They would always put it on an interval, and like, me, I'm like king of repeat. Like I can listen to the same song. Like if I've got a song that's like kicking me right now, I will put it on repeat and I can listen to it for 20 minutes without question. But hey, because I think of varieties for the week, but I will do like 10, 15, 20-minute intervals with nothing to look at but music and me. But what it does is it takes me to a place to where I can think and picture and visualize race day and my effort, engage it and listen and just be really, really in tune, because the only noise that I have is in my earphones. And what it's in for me when I listen to music, what that does is it allows me to be even more in tune with my body. It just does it for me. Some people probably aren't that way, but it does for me. And I just think we are continuously losing the art of self-regulation, of perceived effort, of visualizing, because we have so much outside interference, because we're either looking at our power, we're looking at our heart monitor, we're looking at our watch, we're looking at Swift, we're looking at Netflix, we're looking at Trainer Road, where's my graph, how am I hitting my numbers? And it's like, I don't even know what I just did. And I just think I think it's becoming a lost art of being in the moment. And the more and more we allow interference and those opportunities to infiltrate our training and our life, the more distracted we're going to come, the less present we're going to be, and the less we're going to take from everything that we do.
Well, you're preaching to the choir over here. I mean,
this is right up your alley, man. I'm like drinking the Mike's Rally juice this morning.
Whoa, what is going on, man?
You, buddy.
It's well, I've said that all along, and sometimes when I'm riding the trainer, because we talked about this before, that if you're doing an interval workout on a trainer, it's best to just shut everything off. Because if you're watching, like me, if I'm watching like a basketball game or something, you know how like when you're watching a game, you kind of give the body English, like get in the back, like I start doing that with my knee and my like stroke stops, and I stop pedaling. So
you're going to do both of them wrong.
Right.
You're not going to do the interval right, and you're not going to be totally engaged. You're not going to know what happened in the game because you're going to be distracted because you're bouncing back and forth.
Right. Well, and I think that's like in the off. Like usually when I'm watching basketball, it's the off season, which is fine because if I'm on the trainer, it's a win in general. So there's that part too. Like I think it helps get you on there. If that's part of the case, yeah, that's fine. But if you're working intervals, it's probably not the best thing to be doing to watching. Like Ozark or something like that, because it can really which is coming. No, Peaky Blinders is coming back. That's what we figured out this month.
Yeah, dude, can't wait.
It's gonna be big. But anyway, I could even take that a step further because I've talked about, and I'm almost 100% outside on running and biking year round. So I'm fortunate enough to do that in Nashville. I'm fortunate enough to have a place where I can go, and I know I get the whole part about why it can be a challenge to ride outside if you don't have a spot. I can't imagine really riding on the roads around here. I know a lot of people do, but it just freaks me out. But
and to be fair, you've got like the king of all king setups.
I do with the airport, the lab thing that I go to a lot, which is perfect. But I think that I wonder if there's got to be communities where there's like huge abandoned parking lots where people could kind of do the same loopy things or something. But also I wanted to talk about music a little bit because I've talked about that, and I think music almost can feel like a little bit of a crutch. So like I'm getting closer to race day up at Ironman, Wisconsin, and I'm actually at a point where I'm going to start weaning off my music on the runs. I actually wear it out at the airport on the rides too, but it's a different ball game even there because you talk about visualization and all that mental toughness, and that's exactly where I like to live all the time. And I try to make these experiences as I get towards race day just a little bit more focused. And for me, it is like music kind of gives me a little bit of a jolt, So, but can I bring that into play without music is the question. And occasionally lately I've been doing it. I'll shut it off at the end of the run, which is, the time when you need it most a lot of times. But I talk about race energy. So I feel like if you can do it without any music, without any distraction or whatever, you can just go out and run with your breath. But then you get around a race and people are screaming at you, and then you have those like good distractions. I think that helps you. I think it makes you better. So yeah, man, I'm all about that. I think this distraction stuff, and that's what I say. It's like, I get depressed if I, play around with the power meter every now and then, and I see the numbers I don't want to see, and it starts taking my mind away from what I'm doing almost sometimes. If I'm not hitting certain things and whatever. And for me, if I can let that go and just get into that spot where I'm looking at a race or thinking about the race or just saying, okay, man, you're struggling now, and this is like mile 80. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to overcome this right now without, any external devices or distractions? It's just you and the bike and the road and the wind and the sun and the saddle pain.
And having to react to things that you can't prepare for that actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no. I mean, that's why I think interval work is great for the trainer, and then long rides are best outside. Is that like you need that time. And I mean, I used to be a music guy too, and I ran. Now I've just gone cold turkey. I just don't do it. I like it. I like not running. Or not running with it because it's like the time to get outside and like detach from devices, and I feel like I can be touched if I have, music or something. But I think that we've gotten so addicted to welcoming interference because it keeps us busy, but being busy doesn't mean you're actually purposefully accumulating anything worthwhile. It's like the substitute teacher coming in when your teacher's out and you get like 19 dittos or worksheets for the day. It's just busy work. It's just to create the optic of things getting done. It doesn't mean anything purposeful is happening. But we live in an age now to where like we're almost uncomfortable with nothing. We all do it. We're standing there and they're like, oh my God, if my phone isn't like attached to my hand and I have like this, like, it's like we've created like an epidemic of anxiety.
Yeah.
We can't just sit there. It's like our first inclination. I mean, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. And it's just like, why am I doing this? We just can't sit there with our own thoughts. We have to be distracted. We have to create more things. And I get it. Like, I think that, for a lot of people don't live in places where they can ride outside all the time. They have to be careful. But, I think there are things you can do. Like, I'm the same with you. Like, if I'm doing like a long, easy ride, then I'll watch something, or I'll punch pause for a period and focus in. Or if I'm doing intervals, and I absolutely pause it, or just turn my TV off and I just listen to music. And I like to visualize race day. I like to visualize being in pain. I like to visualize what it's going to feel like, and I like to see and feel myself responding in a way that's going to be positive on race day, and visualizing myself through that. And while it might not be perfect visualization because I don't know what's going to happen, I'm practicing being in the moment. And because when you get on the race course, just like you said, it's just you. And for some people, like, you might get on like a lonely stretch of road where it is only you. And you have to still pay attention. You have to hold your line. You can't be swerving left or right. You have to be in the moment. You have to make good decisions, because there are so many decisions you have to make. I would venture to say, depending on the length of the race, athletes are required to make more decisions on race day than they've had to make in the whole prior 3 to 4 months of training combined.
Yeah,
in terms of in the moment, and how those things pile up and how mentally focused you have to be. Yet we have done our best to dull those senses and not be, because listen, being distracted and being entertained is not being engaged. They're totally different. And I just think that we're so busy with being entertained that we have found ourselves mistaking being entertained for being engaged. And that if you go back and you look at your sessions, or you look at your runs, you look at your ride, and how you just kind of drift off and let the distractions guide you versus you driving that internal train, that is how you're supposed to develop things, how you're supposed to react to the training, how you're supposed to execute things, how you're supposed to be in the moment. That if you're not listening, you're not paying attention, then you drift off, and how easy it is to do that. And it happens to everyone. Like, the more and more you add that the entertainment thing in, the less. And I think that's another reason why people have that feeling about race day. It's like, are you not entertained? Like, it's like, I thought it's supposed to be for me. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's supposed to be, everything that I want it to be. I need more. I think that's the point. Like, for the email you were going back and forth with that lady about, it's like, it's not for your entertainment. We're there for us. Like, you need to be responsible for you and your own experience. Yet we now want everything to be entertaining because we expect it to be. Because if it's not entertaining, then guess what? We're left with our own thoughts. We have to make up decisions. We have to keep our mind engaged, because that's why the addiction to the phone is so rampant, is because it takes effort to stay engaged. It takes effort to be in the moment and to be present. Like, this one of the podcasts I listen to is like, if you're writing a book right now and you're asking somebody to read it, it's a gigantic ask.
Yeah, I bet.
It is a huge ask to think anybody would want to read your book in this day and age of total distraction, total entertainment value, everything at your disposal. You can get whatever you want to all the time. You're asking them to sit down in peace and quiet and take time out of the day to read your book.
Yeah.
And how much things have changed in the last few years.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a great reason to read a book. Like, people are talking about, people don't read books anymore. but that's like a discipline thing, you know. It's like I just actually finished a book, and it was like this weird thing where you kind of go into a different space and almost feel more patient with life a little bit. I think that, man, we're turning into robots. Let's just face it. The world, they're trying to turn us into robots, and I'm trying to slow that process down, but I'm going to eventually lose. I can tell. But the reality is, you know, that's the thing about riding a bike too, is that I always think about this, man. Like the decisions you have to make, the focus you have to have, just because how many times have you just been out riding and all of a sudden kind of just like, whoa, what happened? Right? I just sort of blanked out, and the next thing you know, you're kind of flirting with the shoulder, and I mean, you have to do. You're racing for 112 miles at Ironman, and there's a lot of opportunity to sort of lose your thought process, you know. And I think the worse you are at that, the more dangerous it becomes. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the habit of just being focused. And to me, that's the biggest difference between people who absolutely go out and have great races and people who don't. Because the people who do have great races understand that this is 112 miles of focus, or 142 point whatever it is, 6. And you know, that doesn't mean it can't be enjoyable and you can't have moments where you actually plan to have like a little bit of fun with things or whatever like that. But for the most part, you have to be grinding. And if you're not used to it, like we talk about all the time, a lot of people have ridden century rides with their friends and they've kind of just talked a lot of the way, taken a lot of breaks or whatever like that. They haven't ridden 112 miles in a race. You know? And frankly, it gets very difficult. Probably a lot earlier than they think it will, you know? And it's a big issue with me. It's like, you know, that's why I just really harp on the mental aspects of this a lot in training, especially. It's like, you know, a lot of people get caught up in how far I should ride or how much I should. I always just say, you know, just be really zoned in on your sessions and make good sessions and get used to that idea of fighting through something when it's tough. You know, just practice that kind of stuff, because for me, it's way more valuable to be able to do that and overcome something like that when you're struggling than it is to go out and have like a 17-mile ride where you have no, or a 17-mile run when you have no issues or something. You know, it's those like challenges in training. How do you get through them? Because those are the things that happen to people in races, and they lose their mind and then they're beat.
When you look back on some of the best race moments from your career, or some of the best training days or training things you remember, what are some of the things that stick out to you? I'm not kind of putting you on the spot, but
yeah. Well, the best, sometimes like the big thing for me always is like, it seems like some of the worst days I'm going to have end up being the best. And it's just because like,
totally.
Like a lot of times what'll happen for me is I'll try, like a lot of times it's running, and well, it's happened in cycling too, because we've talked about some of my,
yeah, I've been there for some of your grumpy first 30.
beginnings. Well, a lot of times that, yeah, it's like, I feel like people, I'm just starting to get wake up and people are ready to ride, you know, and it takes me a while to warm up. So in those cases, I just have to figure out what I call, you know, my warm-up speed or my all-day pace or something that can get me going, and just kind of just stay in that pocket for a while, and then just hope things will, I guess, loosen up or free up in my brain or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of times that happens on runs where I'm like, man, I got to go. This is like a 2-hour run, and I'm 15 in, and I can barely, you know I don't have the speed today, but then I end up having the speed because I accept where I'm at, and just like, I do this all the time. Like if I have a pain or something, I will like think about it, and then I'll realize that something must be going, I must be out of balance, or I'm being lazy with my left leg or something like that. And I'll start focusing on that. And it sort of changes the way I feel. And that I really focus on getting rid of pain instead of being like, oh man, I got pain, I can't do this.
Right.
Because a lot of times it's just sort of this inflammation, or, you know, that kind of isn't like an injury kind of deal, but it's more about how are you running today, or what are you being lazy with, or what's going down. So to me, that's how I get through it. I really work on stuff like that, and it's amazing how it can work. To be honest, I just can't believe it. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, my Achilles is screwed again, because I've had a long time Achilles problem, and then I'll just start taking a little pressure off of it and letting it kind of run without being like, oh, I'm gonna jam this thing, I'm gonna fight through this thing or whatever, And so it's stuff like that, or like I've been out running before, and I've just mistakenly put on some like heavy socks that I don't like, and and your feet start burning early, and you just got to kind of fight. I don't know. I mean,
it all comes down to the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Between you and your body. And it's like, if you go back to, I think we've actually used this analogy before. It's like if you want to go have a cup of coffee and with a buddy and talk for a while, are you going to pick like the noisiest bar on the block, or are you going to try and find like this secluded hole in the wall coffee shop to where you can go somewhere and like sit down and chat?
Yeah.
You're going to find the quietest place, because you can be focused and be present. There's going to be less distraction. Things are more meaningful. This day and age, like all we're doing is like sitting in the local sports bar with 98,000 TVs on and people screaming, and then trying to concentrate and get things done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're just, I think that as athletes, and even some coaches, I think we have become so like inept on being driven to make our own decisions. Do I feel good? Do I not feel good? Should I push it? Should I not push it? Build or not to build? When to build or when not to build? That we've removed to become like distracted robots. Oh, I'm supposed to run 9-minute miles today. That's all I'm going to run. 9 minutes on the nose, period. There's like zero flexibility for mental and emotional adjustment and creativity based around how am I feeling today, and I'm going to make this decision. And I totally get it, because some of my athletes absolutely despise it. That a lot of the sessions that I give they're not open for interpretation, but they require you to make decisions. Build between these percentages around this zone based on what you're feeling, because I just think it's so incredibly important, and it's a skill that has to be taught, that you have to adapt to, that you have to persevere through, that you have to experience before you can do it on race day, because race day is about making decisions in your own head. No other friends around, no other spouse around, or their coaches around. I don't have my Zwift. I don't have my data immediate tell me what to do or what not to do. You have to make those decisions. And so oftentimes those decisions that you make and that you may or may not have practiced are going to be are going to create the total outcome for your day based on your decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Not your coaches, not your training buddies, but yours, because you're alone. And so I think that the more you can practice the discipline and the engagement and being present and making those decisions in training, the more prepared you are on race day to feel things out. And listen, as a coach, I would rather you make every single poor decision you've ever made during training, to practice that and understand that and learn your lessons. Right, but you need to learn those lessons by your own decision. You don't want to learn them because you want to blame your coach for telling you should have run 8:30s for 20 miles and then you bonked. Like, you want to leave that up to them to figure it out, because at mile 10 of a marathon, or mile 3 coming out for 70.3, or the first mile of Olympic, guess who's going to be there to make that decision? Guess who's driving the car? You are. And if you haven't practiced on feeling your body, if you haven't practiced on understanding that, and you don't know when to go, you don't know when to hold back, guess whose responsibility it is? It's yours. It is 100% your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But so many athletes are incapable of, and not just incapable, they're absolutely terrified to make a decision. And they just hold back and don't make one. And they just kind of steady, slow their roll into the finish. And they wonder why they can't ever press it, or they can't ever throw down the throttle, or they don't know how to pace things, because they haven't practiced. Because everything they've done is to remove decision making. And if you're not in tune with your body, then nobody's going to be. Your body is the greatest, smartest computer on the planet. And most athletes are totally inept on how to work it and how to operate it.
Yeah, let me give you an example of something I did the other day. Like this is the kind of stuff I'll think about and work on and experiment. Well, it's what by necessity. Sometimes I was out on I think it was a 2-hour run. It was super, super hot, and I got to the 40. I was out. I had 45 minutes left, and I got to this water station where I was going to refuel or fill up my bottle, and I just was kind of cooked, man. I'm like, I got 45 minutes to go. It's super hot, and I don't have it. That's not a fun feeling to have. So
no,
I actually spent like probably 5 minutes. I probably wouldn't do this in a race necessarily 5 minutes, but I spent a lot of time. I was dumping water in my head, and I hit a goo, and I just sort of like spent a little time, just a lot of time actually cooling down, and I just stood there. I didn't walk around or anything. I was just standing there and just kind of like breathing and whatever, and it changed my day. So. What I think, thinking back to my Ironman races, I think I've made mostly good decisions. And the one race that was the worst one for me was that hot Louisville day when it was back in August. And what I wish I would have done in retrospect was not come running out of the T2 hard. I mean, not hard, but like running like I thought I could run a marathon right then, and spent a little bit of time. We always say this, keep moving forward, move forwards a pace or whatever, that kind of stuff. But I really believe that in a races like Ohio even, and I think a lot of people might agree with this now in retrospect, but it's very hard to do during a race, is stop when you're coming out of T2 and just pour a ton of water on you, cool down. Maybe that's that in the first aid station, do the same thing. Get your body under control, because you think you can overcome it, but at a certain point, when you say, look, we talked about it all the time, when you get overheated, you can't come back. Yep. So what sense does it make to, fight through the whole race when you can maybe change the game in the first mile or two by getting yourself recooled, getting yourself under control, and then being able to do what you want to do? And, it's sort of like walk 10 steps through the aid station. Take your time or stop or just like really do what it takes, because it can change the game, I think, rather than sort of maybe, tweaking things a little bit and then, you get in the same problem every aid station. You walk a little bit, you try to do it, but take maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. Like, it's a long day. If you can really, truly change how your body and make a decision that is a game changer, that might be worth it rather than walking the last 8 miles. So it's
so that requires. But and here's the thing: is like, and I understand this is why it's a required skill, because with those decisions comes pressure. Because on race day, it is 100% totally up to you. You can have the greatest fitness in the world, but if you fail to execute it, it means nothing. Because there has never been a race ever in the history of Earth where there was direct correlation between first and 30th based on the first best fitness and the 30th best fitness. It never goes numerical down the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, based on best quote unquote fitness. Because that's not real world. Once you apply it to race day, where you have to make tactical decisions, where you have to respond, where you have to overcome obstacles or other people involved, that's where things get mixed. It's about the athletes with the best fitness making the best decisions. But on race day, when you have to make those in those long days to pull back or go forward, guess who has to assume all the risk? You do. And a lot of athletes are absolutely terrified to make those decisions. Because what if it leads to something bad? Then they have to take accountability for that poor decision. And then I don't know how I'm going to live with myself on Facebook or Instagram having to explain why I made this bad decision and what people are going to think of me. First of all, who cares? Second of all, take risks. Make decisions. I'm going to say be spontaneous. Just be calculated. And don't be afraid to go for it. Like, a lot of times when I'll have to tell athletes to just not wear a watch and just go for broke, or sometimes I'll even say to them, I want you to try and blow up. It's not that I want them to have a bad race. It's that I need them to find that line. I need to push them to a point that they're not willing to push themselves, because we like to race with a governor. We don't like to let it fly. We don't like to race free. We like for things to be controlled, because then we can assign appropriate blame to each, mistake, or we can give praise to each success based on everything being totally controllable. Nothing in training is controllable. Nothing in racing is controllable. It's all about adjustment. It's all about the decisions you're going to make day in and day out that set you up for success. And if you can't practice it in training, don't expect to have it on race day. Don't expect to be able to respond. Don't think you're going to be able to be mentally responsive and confident in making those decisions if you can't make them in training, because you have to have somebody else to tell you. You have to be able to think for yourself. You have to be prepared, and you got to do that in practice, because on race day, and that's the thing, is find races that allow you more of an opportunity just based on however you're feeling as or thought about that race, whether it's a big race or a small race, whether people are going to be there or not going to be there, whether it's a big event with a lot of popularity or it's a small event, and just go blow the gaskets out. Don't wear a watch. Don't let it tell you what you're doing or how to respond, or if you're going too hard. Just go. I can't stress this to you enough. The device on your wrist doesn't hold a candle to the intelligence, responsiveness, and brilliance of you and your brain and human body. It is the greatest machine on earth as you're sitting up top in that brain, even though sometimes it's up for debate when you see people these days. But think of how many split-second decisions you make every single second of the day. It's hard to it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around. How quickly you can respond to something without even thinking about it. That's how smart your body is. Yet so many athletes want to treat it like a stranger, or censor it with this random piece of device put on their wrist that has to tell them everything is right all the time. You got to explore. You got to be creative. You got to be free, because if you're not, you're never going to find your true potential, ever. You're going to be locked into this predictable outcome that's more than likely going to yield the same result over and over and over again. You got to be willing to go for broke sometimes. I'm not saying go up and blow up in every race, but you gotta have fun with it. And the things you'll learn about yourself in those moments you'll learn more about yourself in that kind of a race in an hour and a half or 4 hours or 30 minutes than you will have understood about yourself for years. We had an athlete yesterday who texted me, and I have been imploring this athlete to race without a watch for months. And because this athlete has always kind of thought he was a slower and was never going to be fast. And again, once you convince yourself of that story, you start writing it, whether you want to or not. And so you're afraid to start over again. And I was like, dude, you're racing these short races, and I can just tell you right now, I'm not telling you not good enough, but I'm just telling you, you ain't found it yet. I can see with your training, and I can see with your ability, you got more in there. You're just afraid to tap into it because you're afraid that you might not get it. And he texted me last night. He was like, "We freaking did it, coach! My first ever sub 7 minute pace 5K. It was a minute, almost 2 minute PR on a 5K." He said, "I did not look at my watch one bit, only after the finish line." And the last thing he said was, "I did not let my brain get in the way." And it's not that your brain makes bad decisions. It's that you've molded and shaped the way that your brain interferes with your ability because you've never explored what your body is actually capable of, because your brain drives your body. And so the more conversations you can have between your brain and your body, the more they can get to know each other, the more that you can trust that their decision making is the right decision, the less you question it, the more that you rely on that responsiveness and that communication between brain and body and training and how you're supposed to push and when not to push and slow down or speed up. That's what's going to allow you to have the best race possible, not the device on your wrist. That just tells you how that conversation went. It shouldn't make the conversation scripted.
Yeah, man, that thing can do a lot more harm than good for me a lot of times. I think coming out of starting to run maybe as a governor. Sometimes I look at that thing, but like I've learned that the more I look down to my left on that watch, it just messes with my head. You know, it starts talking me into what I can and cannot do, and it's just this weird connection. So there is a lot to be said for sometimes letting loose can feel easier.
Mm-hmm. So. Letting loose can feel easier. Yeah, it's free. It's freeing. Mm-hmm. Do it. Practice it. Do it when no one's watching. Run your own race. Do your own race, and just see what happens when there's no reins, when you're not reined in, when you're not cemented down, when you can just be free and see what your body is capable of. And it's trusting those moments, and again, it's just like the data is important, but it's supposed to tell you what happened during the conversation. It's between body and brain. It's not supposed to lead the conversation. It's a good interpreter of how it went. It's not supposed to be the narrator.
Yep. Right on, man. Let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up.
Thursday.
Podcast 290. Again, we Mike and I both, we sincerely appreciate you listening. We've gotten a lot of emails the last few days, and it's always good to get feedback and helps continue to drive the train. And it's always energizing to see athletes like we did this last week at Ohio. We have a camp next week. Looking forward to meeting a lot of new athletes coming to that. Our camps are always a great experience. And if you haven't looked, we'll probably try and link to that in the show notes. But our 2020 camps are already halfway sold out. They sell it every year. So if you're interested, look those up, get signed up. Wonderful people, wonderful training atmosphere, wonderful opportunities, and you'll leave with new knowledge, new fitness, and better friends. Yeah. So look that up, and that's next week. And then in just over a month, man, we can officially say next month, because it's August, we'll be up at Wisconsin, hopefully doing some fun things up there. If you are part of the Crushing Iron Closed Facebook group and you don't have a club to affiliate with, we'd love for you to affiliate with us. C26 Triathlon is our club name. You can go into Ironman.com and under your athlete profile, race under C26 Triathlon. And hey, if we end up being the number one team with the most registrants, we get a $1,000 gift card to use at a local restaurant or eating and drinking establishment. And we might just throw like a nice little shindig on race day for everybody to come back and hang out and say hello and share your race war stories and your butts, the race butts. I had a good race, but no, we appreciate you listening. If you've never been, hop on over to our one-stop shop that is crushingiron.com. All things training and coaching, our club, the gear, swim analysis, our training camps, swim and triathlon camps, and cool videos, other information. Again, that's crushingiron.com. If you want to reach out to Mike directly, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you want to reach out to me, you can always hit me up, c26coach@gmail.com.
Yeah. I got to say, when you said next month, that kind of gave me some chills.
You got a little nerve, huh?
Yeah, man. Actually, I loved it. I'm sitting here kind of a little goosebumpy right now. We've got at least, I don't know, 35 or so registered under C26 Triathlon up there, so it's going to be a massive turnout. And of course, I love that race. It's my hometown or my home state, and I've been working hard for it. I'm really excited to race. It's a good feeling. I've not always felt this way going in. Well, I shouldn't say that, but this kind of has a little bit of a different spin on it. For me, we're going to have, a lot of good people that we know up there. It's just going to be a blast.
Yeah, man, I can't wait.
So,
pumped.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll do it.
All right, dude, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, man, thanks.
See you, buddy. Bye.